When do you plan to move there and reduce your trips? Stephen asked. I'm guessing it's going to happen soon, Miles replied. Grace is gradually getting into the idea. Why are you delayed? I'm sorry, but it's none of my business, Miles. But you already mentioned that she doesn't like her job in Arizona. I have no doubt that she will find something more exciting in Kansas. This is definitely a step forward for you as a general manager, but you shouldn't stay too long. Liam will retire at the end of next month. Of course, I did not hide the fact that you are a candidate for this position, but if you do not make a decision in the next 6 weeks, we will have to consider other candidates. Thank you for your patience, Stephen. I feel a little upset myself. Lately, Grace has stopped voicing her grievances against Arizona and seems to be coming up with reasons to avoid moving. Perhaps my absence from this trip will tip the scales. I'll be out from Tuesday to Friday. I plan to talk to Grace about moving over the weekend and will give you a final answer on Monday. Interestingly, Miles began to doubt Grace's intentions. It seems there must be a reason for her sudden increase in happiness at work. Miles didn't have any solid leads, but he couldn't help but think that she might have met someone else. This could explain her reluctance to leave. So he came up with a plan, more like half a plan. He arranged with Liam that he would work in the evenings from Tuesday to Thursday and leave early on the last day. At the same time, he informed Grace that he would not be back until Sunday. Thus, she will have enough opportunities to settle a relationship with a potential lover, if there is one. This plan had its drawbacks. He let Miles come back from Kansas between Thursday and Saturday to check on her. He didn't know where he would stay if she was in their house, or what he would do if he found her with someone else. The situation was becoming more and more uncertain. His absence would have been especially noticeable since Friday marked their 30th wedding anniversary. He had already expressed his regrets to Grace for missing such an important event. To make amends, they have scheduled a big meeting next weekend, which will be attended by all their relatives and friends. The absence of another man in her life might have prompted her to think about leaving. On Tuesday morning, they kissed goodbye, and as he was driving to the airport, an idea struck him. Although she told him not to worry about the flowers, he decided to stop by the flower shop anyway. The store had just opened and was busy taking orders. 2 girls were checking fresh supplies, and the third was dealing with a customer who came even earlier. Miles scanned the storefronts, watching the man in the suit get more and more upset. I'm sorry, sir, but even with the extra £5, we can only promise delivery within an hour, namely between 6 and 7 o'clock in the evening. The man replied, But I have dinner booked for 6:30 p.m., and I need the flowers on the table right after we place the order. Maybe I should look for another place. The seller replied, You can do that, sir, but I can assure you that no other flower shop offers such precise delivery. Please deliver the bouquet to the hotel reception. I will write you the address, please, as soon as possible after 6 p.m. Ideally, he should be there before 6:30 p.m. I will attach an additional note to the desk clerk asking him to give the flowers to me, Mr. Brown. They can leave the bouquet at the reception and give it to me right after my wife and I book a table. We already have reservations for Friday and Saturday, so they'll know who I am. The girl paused for a moment. On Friday, we can arrange with the courier to deliver the first batch to the hotel after 6 p.m. You can write a note to the hotel and specify your room number. Our courier will give it to them, and I'm sure they will be happy to help you with a surprise dinner as part of their usual services. That sounds great. Thank you, but I would like a personal note for your wife to be placed in a sealed envelope to avoid misunderstandings. Is it okay if I read it one last time before I seal it? He looked around and met Miles's gaze. Miles smiled and looked at the red roses. The man smiled. Sure, come on. The note read, Happy anniversary to my dear Grace. I wish you to enjoy orange juice for another 30 years. It's Grace through and... Yes, exactly. Keep the change for yourself. He paid and left. Miles froze in place for a moment. Although the cold was biting, beads of sweat stood out under his collar. After all, it was their wedding anniversary this Friday, and Grace through and was undoubtedly his. Miles often joked that he preferred orange juice to champagne, but the reality of her infidelity was much worse. It was time to think about divorce. How could she have been involved with another man for 30 years, throughout their marriage, and yet Miles had no idea about anything? Did that guy leave a tip for her? He turned to the girl. Yes, she replied. Usually people don't leave tips at the time of ordering, but sometimes customers come after to compliment us on how the flowers turned out. They usually bring chocolates instead of money, but this is not prohibited. Oh, don't worry about it. I also plan to tip you. What amount did he give you? Actually, £3. Well, I'll give you a little more. I need your advice on choosing the perfect flowers for my anniversary, as well as clear delivery instructions. I will compensate you for the confidentiality. Please keep this between us. Don't tell the other two girls about it. When he got on the freeway, he called Stephen and said that he had talked to Grace the night before and was definitely interested in a job in Kansas. 10 minutes later, Liam called to confirm it. I will prepare the contract for your arrival, Miles, he said. Stephen said that you can get to work whenever you want. Do you want to finish early this week? Of course, I would appreciate it. I have to go home and start packing. It was 6:40 p.m., and the couple ordered dinner, completely oblivious to the surroundings. William was wearing a smart black suit, and Grace was wearing a timeless little black dress. The dress was a little too short and revealed the top of the black stockings when she crossed her legs. When she leaned forward, he realized that she was not wearing a bra. They raised glasses of champagne, and their toasts were accompanied by a soft clang. Congratulations on your anniversary, my love, he said. Thank you, my love, she replied, raising her glass. It took you a long time to decide on dinner, he remarked with a smile. It's not my fault, she replied playfully. In the restaurant, the waiter kept pushing different dishes. Of course, she said, rolling her eyes. He couldn't help himself. He seemed to lean towards you a lot. As soon as he offered something, his gaze would turn to you, he teased. I really hope you're not feeling jealous, she said, raising an eyebrow. No, of course not, he replied with a grin. Rather, I am jealous of your husband. He can enjoy all these beautiful curves whenever he pleases, and he also has easy access to all the other charms that you are hiding. I've been keeping my little strawberries, as you call them, out of his reach for weeks now. In fact, you've been using my charms for more time than he has. Next weekend, I'll let him enjoy me for an alternate anniversary, but I'm not wearing panties today. I thought you'd prefer me like this for the weekend. This is a great idea. I think I'll have a fruit salad for dessert. First of all, I will enjoy your strawberries, and then I will drink orange juice, and who knows what else I might find under your dress. Sounds tempting. You can take whatever you want under my dress. I'll settle for something warm and white. You always want to offer a lot more than Miles. Oh, that was fast. The waiter returned, but not with the food. He presented a magnificent bouquet of 30 red roses. Happy anniversary, Mrs. Brown, he said. Turning confidently, he walked away. Petty beamed as she opened the envelope and read the note. You're so romantic, William. I wish I'd really been with you all this time. However, now it's all in the past. More than 30 years ago, you noticed my birthmark. Can you believe that? After all, you've always been a little tricky. How many times has it been? 4? You introduced me to a few of the first ones, but there is one special place that has always belonged only to you. It was your colleague's brilliant idea to hire me as a stripper for your bachelorette party, he said. And coming to work in your office 2 months ago was the best decision of your life. I can't believe you recognized me after all these years. Grace, you haven't changed at all. Maybe your orange got a little fuller and none of your friends told Miles about it. No way. He won't find out now. With the right scenario, we will be able to catch up. Leaning across the table, she kissed him. When she pulled back, a flash caught her attention. Grace turned and saw a man standing next to their table, as if he had been there for a long time. His face was hidden behind a large bouquet of flowers, and the phone with which he took the picture lay in front of him. What are you doing? Delete this photo immediately, she shouted, attracting curious glances from those around her. Happy anniversary, Grace. Miles carefully removed the roses from the table and put his own in their place. There's no note here, Miles remarked. The flowers should convey everything. He presented a bouquet of white lilies, red poppies, and 2 unique black roses, one for her and one for himself. Each of these flowers symbolizes death. In this case, they symbolize the end of our marriage. Grace's eyes widened in shock and her mouth twisted. William leaned back in his chair, trying to distance himself from the unfolding tense situation. With a sudden movement, Miles grabbed William by the hair, pulled his head back, and shoved something into his mouth. Don't worry, gentlemen, it's just a game. He glanced at Grace. It's all over now. What did you put in his mouth? In an instant, William squeezed his nose and a bottle of champagne was in his mouth. He was gasping for breath, and 2 waiters began to approach the scene. Once Miles was sure William had swallowed, he let him go. William's suit and shirt were drenched in champagne, and he stood up coughing. Miles then turned to the approaching people in suits. Don't worry, gentlemen. We just played a little bit, he said, glancing at Grace. It's already been done. So what did you put in his mouth? She screamed, her voice cutting through the air. It was something much more mundane than the words you might have expected. It was my wedding ring. He leaned over and said to Grace, "This is a ring that symbolizes 30 years of your love. Now, it's in the same place as our marriage. By the time you manage to get it, if you need it at all, I'll be in Kansas. You'll have to look for a new place to live, since the house is registered in my name, and you're going to need a divorce lawyer." As he left, he put something in front of William. "Enjoy your dessert, idiot." It was a small orange. The last 2 months have been like hell for Grace. The lack of money has not given her the opportunity to hire a lawyer. The locks were replaced in the house where she had been married for 30 years. In her old age, Grace had nowhere to go, because her and Miles's children lived very far away. William, worried about his marriage, broke off all relations with Grace. She was heartbroken. Grace also understood that Miles would sue for everything they had made. The evidence of infidelity that he filmed on his phone would play an important role in the divorce. On a warm September day, the drill instructor met with his platoon for the last time. "Platoon dismissed," he ordered. About 100 recruits stepped back in unison, replying, "Sir, the platoon has been disbanded." "Yes, sir." They rolled onto their backs, uttering a collective hurrah. When the units broke up and left the parade ground for the last time, many recruits gathered around the instructor to shake his hand and then go to reunite with their family. I was no exception. After shaking hands with the senior sergeant, I picked up my bag and headed for the bus going to the airport. My name is Brad Michaels, but that day I was Lance Corporal Brad Clark of the United States Marine Corps, and all I wanted was to go home and to my fiancée, Diana Lorenzo. After a difficult 6 months, I finally completed rookie training and received the right to wear an eagle, a globe, and an anchor. I was glad to turn the page and start the next chapter of my life, which will include marrying the girl of my dreams. You may be wondering why it took so long, given that boot camp usually lasts about 12 weeks. The reason is simple. Shortly after the end of the first stage, my appendix ruptured, which required surgery and a long recovery period. The doctors expected me to be back on my feet in a few weeks, but in the end, I developed an infection that required antibiotics and special care. The training of my initial platoon continued while I waited for the doctors to declare me fit for service. By the time I recovered enough to resume training without risking a new injury, almost 3 more months had passed. In the end, I was assigned to a new platoon, and I completed a difficult training course, earning the title of the best recruit. Along with receiving a set of dress uniforms at that time, Marines usually bought them with their own funds. I received the rank of Lance Corporal. Diana and I exchanged letters as often as possible, and she often sent me photos. However, a month or 2 ago the photos stopped coming. Some of the pictures still came to the corkboard in our compartment, where the recruits could post photos of their wives or girlfriends, many of whom were quite explicit. Nudity was strictly forbidden. When graduation was approaching, the recruits decided to hold a contest for the best photo. Diana sent several pictures, many of which showed her in a short dress or swimsuit, although some had a little more skin. In one of the photos, she was wrapped in a bath towel, and one slender leg peeked out from behind her belt. Although it wasn't explicit, it was obvious that she wasn't wearing anything under the towel. This photo won the competition, and I felt a sense of pride that I got engaged to such an attractive woman. However, I couldn't help but wonder who took the picture, as it seemed unlikely that the photographer was her brother or father. After all, in those years, mobile phones with cameras and selfie sticks were not yet in use. Also, the amount of skin in the photo was much more than she had ever shown me. From the very beginning, she made it clear that she was a devout Catholic and would never completely undress in front of her future husband before the wedding night. Therefore, this meant that we had never had an intimate relationship. We only had one kiss, and she wouldn't let me touch her. She assured me that everything would be different on the wedding night. It didn't come as a shock to me. I've known Masha since 5th grade, and although she often flirted, she was never frivolous or promiscuous. In fact, at that time I would have called it quite modest. On the day of graduation, I naturally decided that she was still untouched. Now, let me introduce you to my old school friend, Jack Harris. We had been friends for at least a year before I met Masha, and we did everything together, went fishing, went hiking, and even spent the night at each other's houses. As we got older, I began to notice that he was always eager to grab onto whatever thing I had, and often tried to outdo me at every opportunity. For example, if I got a new fishing rod, he immediately ran after it to buy a bigger or better reel. In high school, he often tried to tease Diana, even though he knew that we were inseparable, as modern children say. Diana just smiled and walked away, ignoring his antics. The day I left for the camp, he escorted me to the airport and assured me that he would look after Diana. I had no reason to doubt his words, so I just shook his hand and thanked him. When the plane finally landed at a small airport near our town, it was already quite late, and my parents took me home to rest. The first thing I did when I got settled was to call Diana. "I've got a surprise for you," she said, giggling as she often did. "I can't wait to see him," I replied, filled with anticipation. "I'll stop by your place right on the way to the old school." After chatting for over an hour, we ended our conversation. The next day, I wanted to show off two things: my uniform and my future wife. I put on my uniform, got into a pickup truck, and went to my old school. After talking with my former principal and several teachers, I drove up to Diana's house. Before I could knock, Masha opened the door. "Surprise!" she exclaimed. "Honey, you're going to be a dad." "What?" I replied, stunned by her unexpected news. I quickly noticed her growing belly and how much bigger her breasts had become since the last time I saw her. It was clear that she was pregnant, but it wasn't my baby. After all, I had been away from home for almost 6 months, and we had never been close. She always insisted on it. "Are you serious?" I asked. "You know we've never slept together. Moreover, I haven't even seen you without your clothes on, so how can I become a father?" "Well, we're getting married, and since I'm a mother, then you'll be a father," she replied. "What do you mean? You don't think I believe in this nonsense?" I exclaimed. "Just tell me the truth. Who is the father?" "You," she said firmly. "When we get married, you will become a father." My thoughts were racing. There was no way she could be serious. "Are you really that naive, Diana?" I replied. "We've never had intimacy, and you expect me to raise someone else's child?" "Well," she began, but I interrupted her. "Diana, Diana, Diana," I said, playfully imitating the famous phrase from the series. I took a deep breath and counted to 10. I loved Diana, but I was furious. I needed to know the truth. "Just tell me, Diana, did you and Jack sleep together while I was gone?" She straightened up and looked away, as if fearing my reaction. "Yes, Just a few times, she finally admitted. It was only because I loved you and missed you. It didn't really mean anything. How many times? I asked. I don't know. Maybe 15 or 20, she replied. So you've been with Jack 15 or 20 times? And now you're saying she's pregnant and all this is because you love me? I asked, disbelief in my voice. Yes, she replied, tears welling up in her eyes. And you're saying that this is really my child because we have to get married? Yes, Diana confirmed. I shook my head in confusion. By then, her father and brother had entered the living room. I'm sorry, Mr. Lorenzo, but I can't go to this wedding, I said. He didn't look pleased. But Diana said it's your child, so I think you should step up and do the right thing, he replied. I couldn't believe it. I thought, is everyone in this family really that dumb? Mr. Lorenzo, do you realize that Diana and I have never been intimate? I haven't even seen her without her clothes on, and she just admitted that she was with Jack Harris about 15 or 20 times, I said. Is that really the case? He turned to his daughter. Oh yes, Daddy, she sobbed. He looked at her as if she was something unpleasant that the dog had left in the yard. Damn it, he muttered. You have as much stupidity as your mother, he said, his eyes filled with genuine sadness. I sincerely apologize, son. I didn't know that my daughter inherited her mother's lack of common sense. Are you sure you can't handle this? I'm not sure, mister, I replied. If she can't be faithful to me while I'm in a military camp, there's no way she'll be faithful if I go to war. I refuse to raise someone else's child. Anyway, we'll just get divorced. Dad, Diana interjected. Jack and I only had an intimate relationship. We never made love. Then her brother Michael burst out laughing. Come on, Diana, he said. In the living room, I saw you literally shaking the spirit out of him, and at the same time his two friends are next to each other. In fact, I have some pictures to prove it. He turned to me with a grin. Why don't you take a look? A thought struck me. Michael, did you by any chance take that picture of Diana in a towel that she sent me? I asked. Oh, definitely, he replied. It was a good time. Check it out, he said, and reached for a thick photo album on a nearby bookshelf. He opened it and started showing me the photos preceding the one of her in a towel. Here she is, completely naked by the pool, captured in a series of Polaroids. She really got carried away with it, Michael commented with a grin. Do you remember that day, Dad? He asked, looking at his confused father. That day she gave Jack that risky lap dance on the picnic table. Michael turned to me and added, She can really be very wild. I also have a bunch of photos. Here's one where she's with two guys at once, he said, opening another book and showing a photo of Diana. Come on, Michael, don't use such words in front of your sister, his father interjected. But that's exactly what she was doing, Dad, he replied. I was shocked by what I heard. Lorenzo has always been honest. What kind of madness is going on in this house? I thought to myself. Diana, I asked, how many men have you been with since I proposed to you? I don't know for sure, maybe 7 or 8, she replied. Michael giggled again. Maybe 700 or 800, he said sarcastically. And don't forget, I have photos to prove it, he added, pointing to the numerous albums in the bookcase. But it was only physical. I didn't love any of them. I only love you, and I'm saving myself for you, I promise, she replied. Tell me, do you ever use protection with guys you've slept with? What does it mean to protect yourself? What is it? She asked, deliberately stretching her words. It seemed absurd to me. I couldn't figure it out. My girl, who seemed so innocent, was involved in something so shocking, openly flaunting her choice and even her relationship with her family, without the slightest hint of shame. I was stunned that she had kept it from me for so long. I realized that I needed to get out of this chaotic situation. I need to leave, I said firmly. Diana, the ceremony is canceled. After everything I've just learned, there's no way we can hold it. You don't even know who the father of your child really is. I am monogamous, and I expect the same from my wife. I turned to leave, but Diana jumped up, begging, Please don't leave. I didn't love them. I only loved you. Oh no, Diana. You don't understand love. Maybe you know what desire is, but not love. As far as I know, you were with half the county while pretending to be innocent and making me believe in your loyalty, I replied. It's not like that, she replied. I didn't have half the neighborhood. 150,000 people live here, and I definitely didn't have 75,000 guys, not even close. Well done, Diana, I said, but it's too late for us. I have to go. I wish you a happy life, seriously speaking. Bye. I turned and walked away without looking back. When I got home, I changed into blue jeans and a marine t-shirt, and then went out for a drink. I ended up at the hotel drinking beer and thinking about the events of the day. Suddenly I noticed that someone was standing next to me. I turned to see who it was. Li Ya, I said. It's nice to meet you. Can I get you a drink? Margaret asked. She was an old friend of mine. We had known each other since elementary school and had remained close ever since. When I first got engaged, she warned me about Diana, but I brushed off her concerns, thinking she was just jealous. Have you seen her yet? What is it? She asked. Well, yes, I replied, realizing how stupid I had been. You knew all along, didn't you? Everyone except you, she replied. I think love really blinds us. So, the wedding is still in force? I shook my head. Everything is canceled. I can't move on in any way. What are you going to do? What is it? She asked. I studied her closely. Margaret may not have had the sultry appeal of Diana, but her fiery red hair and captivating green eyes have always fascinated me. Do you want to eat? A smile spread across her face. I'm actually very hungry, she replied. I could use something to eat too. She took my hand and led me out of the bar. Do I really have to explain what happened? She told me what Diana was doing while I was gone. I was deeply saddened by everything that happened, but Margaret comforted me and taught me to love again. 3 months later, Diana gave birth. She became a single mother. Diana's father refused to help her. He made her an offer that hurt her heart. Diana had to transfer the child to the full custody of her father, and she herself had to live wherever she wanted. Diana refused the child, tearing herself to pieces. Her pain was so deep that she almost did stupid things, after which she ended up in forced confinement in a psychiatric hospital. A year later, Margaret became the love of my life. And now, a few years later, I am writing this story, happily married to Margaret, who gave birth to 3 wonderful children.